Today we've got a great malicious compliance story all about a company finding out what happens when they remove software access from the single most important employee at the company. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, HOA President wanted heat. I manage an NYC condo with central AC that, once switched to winter mode, can't go back to cooling until spring. NYC law requires heat starting October 1st, but October swings from chilly to unreasonably warm, so we usually wait for a real cold stretch before turning it on. Tenants were fine with this for years. One chilly day was better than being unbearably hot for 10. Last year, the board president lost it over a slightly chilly day towards the middle of October. She sent an email demanding we turn on the heating system immediately and that going forward, the heat must always be on by October 1st. She didn't care if other units would be uncomfortably warm and that she's the board president and she should be comfortable in her unit. This year, we followed her orders. On October 1st, heat on. At the annual meeting, tenants were furious. They wanted to know why a system that had worked for years was suddenly broken. The president started chewing me out for getting her email the previous year. Not wanting to deal with her nonsense, I got the green light from my boss to pull up her own email on the projector. Her exact words, her exact demands. She went pale and, for the first time ever, had nothing to say. She lost her position in the election. Her replacement was very happy we called her out, and we renewed our contract for 5 more years. You know, I would just love to know one thing from OP. How much were they beaming when they put her email up on the projector? Or how much were they praying that she would give them the chance to do so? Like the wherewithal to not only keep the emails but have them ready to be put up on the projector in case it needed to happen. And also, this spurs the age-old debate, hot or cold. Because, in my opinion, I would rather it be too cold than too hot. You can put more layers on, and I myself am a very heat-intolerant person. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no true reason one is better than the other, right? It's all kind of preferences. Theratan commented, "It's always nice when proper record keeping covers your butt. If New York City law requires heat from October 1st, however, doesn't going back to the old way create legal exposure for your company? A better long-term outcome might be using the combination of law and consequences as an illustration on why the building needs to upgrade its HVAC system so the heat output can be better controlled. Letting the heating system be on, but throttling the output to extremely minimal levels to avoid the overheating. Just a thought for action during the renewed contract." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy crazy stories of malicious compliance, it would be amazing if you hit those like or subscribe buttons down below. That said, our next story is IT wanted process over results, I gave them process, and panic. A couple of years ago, I got shuffled out of the business side and into IT during a reorg. The official reason was better alignment with software delivery. The real reason, I'm expensive. I don't do sales and IT has a bigger budget. Also, and this is an educated speculation, I kept not approving IT's builds for not meeting specs, which apparently makes me difficult and not solution-oriented. So now I report to the executive I had previously challenged over the quality of his team's work. Since joining IT, everything had to be a ticket. Doesn't matter if it's a question, a clarification, or a divine revelation, no ticket, no work. PMs handle ticket creation and prioritization, which sounds fine in theory, except my actual job is to consult with business analysts and developers. I know more about the rules, regulations, and use cases of our software than anyone in the company, and my work doesn't easily fall into a ticket, as it's more of a problem-solving role for existing tickets. Still, no ticket equals no work. Bureaucracy over brains. Clients, especially senior ones, tend to reach out to me directly because I can actually answer their questions. Normally, I would just respond and, if needed, make a ticket afterward for tracking. But management didn't like that. After one particularly spirited discussion over delays to close low-priority tickets in lieu of responding to high-priority client emails, my boss told me to stop responding to client emails altogether. I was to forward them to PMs who would create, prioritize, and assign tickets. I explained patiently that these emails often come from executives and need quick turnaround. Boss's response? Follow the process or we won't know how overworked you are. Okay then, boss, let's follow the process. A week later, I get an email from the CFO of one of our biggest clients asking for details about a customized build. Normally, I'd get an estimate out in a couple of hours. Instead, I CC'd my boss and PM, confirmed I'd received the request, and politely asked them to create and assign a ticket. A few days later, the CFO followed up. "We need this by Friday." I replied again, CCing everyone, apologizing for the delay and asking that the assigned resource take note of the urgency. Knowing full well no one had assigned the ticket, behind the scenes, I'd already done the estimate and informed the client what was happening. Spoiler, nothing. Suddenly, my boss is frantically pinging me, "Why haven't you gotten back to the CFO?" I calmly reminded him that 1, he told me to only work on assigned tickets, 2, he was CC'd on every email, 3, he would have to ask the PM for a status update. There was a long, delicious silence before he finally replied, "Okay, you don't need a ticket for everything. In the future, if it's from an executive, just respond and make a ticket afterward." "Sure thing, boss. Glad we cleared that up." I sent the estimate, everyone was happy, and peace was restored. And better yet, management now puts results over process. Well, the first part anyway, but peace and results? Well, that's a malicious compliance story for another day. You know, my dream in this scenario would be the person who was the brainiac of shifting OP to the IT department just so it looks financially better, would eventually be singled out for the terrible idea of moving somebody as important to OP under the purview of IT. "I'm sorry, OP, did you make a ticket about what the CFO personally asked you to do? You know, our client? How much more dumb can the process get?" Honest Pepper 8229 commented, "You could start a band and call it Panic at the Cisco." Our next story is, management said we had to work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, so we did, and let them deal with explaining to our California clients why we weren't available. So this happened a while ago before remote work was even a concept. Think 2008-ish. I was working at a large media agency, and for anyone who knows agency work, we typically work around our client's schedule, or at least as best as possible. We were based in New York City but had California clients, so it was pretty standard that we would get in at 10 a.m. and leave 7 or 8 p.m. If you stayed to 9 p.m., you could take a car service home, so we sometimes just did that. Most of us were in our 20s, so no big deal. When a new CEO started, he was used to working in Europe and hated that we weren't in the office at 8 a.m. and forced a company policy that we had to be in the office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We of course followed the rules because who wouldn't want to leave at 5? Let's just say that the policy was lifted within 2 weeks when our West Coast clients couldn't get in touch with us. So, that kind of policy works well if, you're doing construction or something. 8 to 5, yeah, that makes sense. But when you're working in anything that has a global outreach or even continental outreach, you begin to wonder how that manager got into that position. Particular Ticket 20 commented, "I, East Coast, had a coworker, West Coast, who scheduled a recurring Friday afternoon meeting. For him, it was an early afternoon meeting. He would wrap up and kick off relatively early on Friday. For us, it was a late Friday evening. Obviously, nobody wanted to work into the early evening on Fridays. I asked to reschedule and was told that it was his meeting and we had to deal with it. Okay. I scheduled a Monday morning call for his projects. He cried about the early hours. Nobody has 5 a.m. meetings. Sorry, dude. Deal with it." He actually went to my boss, who was basically like, "What did you think would happen? You have to be on the Monday call." His Friday call got rescheduled pretty quickly. I just canceled my bullcrap meeting. They Make Me Wear Pants replied, "I had something kinda similar. I, East Coast US, had some coworkers in London and a guy from my office wanted to schedule a recurring team meeting on a Friday afternoon. I pointed out the immediate problem that it was going to be around 9 to 10 p.m. for them and that wasn't a great idea. He was insistent that it would be fine. I had to go over his head to get his boss to tell him to cut that crap out. Not sure if the London guys knew any of this was happening. I got it stopped before the first one was even booked." Our next story is, "But they aren't wearing ties." I saw a similar story that reminded me of mine. Many years ago, I worked at a print shop that no longer has its original name, but people still call it by its original name and is notorious for iffy customer service. Side note, one of the main reasons is that we encountered the most ridiculous asks, so when a perfectly reasonable request came through, we were already sitting on, ready to engage in the madness. Apologies for anyone who was reasonable. Anyway, we were a pretty laid-back island of misfits store. Grad students, wayward musicians, lifers, tokers, and single moms who worked 2 jobs, but collectively got ish done. P&L unmatched to the smoke breaks taken. Our uniforms were navy pants and a button-down shirt, long or short sleeve, dealer's choice, and could even order a cardigan sweater, which all came from the corporate catalog. We get a new district manager who does a store visit. She determines that the men were not adhering to the official uniform because none of them were wearing ties. Pause. The reason why? We have an industrial-size laminating machine that was diabolical and easily snatched up ties. Just a general choking hazard, and made absolutely no sense to wear to do this job. She threatens to write up anyone non-compliant and puts our store on notice. Quiet Storm Gill, not his real name, says, bet. He reviews the handbook and sees that both neckties and bow ties are acceptable with no additional descriptions. So he orders a box of what can only be called the comical clown collection of bow ties from eBay. Puts them in the break room and tells the store to have at it. We're talking about polka dots, paisley, stripes in every color of the rainbow and of ridiculous size proportions. Honestly, a joy to witness. Customers are like, this is interesting, which, by the way, makes Gil and the others grumpy because they're taking a stance, not trying to spend more time with customers. A month later, the district manager visits again. We have now normalized the bow ties. She is livid. She speaks to our store manager, who shows her the employee handbook and points out how it doesn't provide color or size parameters, and technically, they are all compliant and have taken her warning seriously. So, after she leaves, our store manager says that they no longer have to wear ties, and it's up to the discretion of each employee if they want to wear a tie on shift. Every now and then, someone would walk onto the floor with a polka dot reminder. Well, may not be the best print job you'll ever get, but if you walked into a place and you need some copies done, and you see people behind the counter wearing these big, loud, polka dot, paisley, red and blue and whatnot clown ties, I think honestly I'd be more willing to give them a chance than I would not. If anything, they'd at least have made me smile. And shoot, maybe if they were a bunch of misfits, they were kind of just getting a little bit more in theme. The Odyssey commented, in the late 1970s, my dad worked in an assembly plant as an engineer and was therefore required to wear a tie. One time he saw an accident where an engineer ignored some safety regulation and got pulled into a stamping machine by his tie. That night, he bought a length of Velcro on the way home and had my mom, a seamstress, cut all of his ties at the back of the neck and sew the 2 sides of the Velcro to the either end. The tie would stay together unless you gave it a mild yank, and then would tear apart. Thomorian replied, when I worked security, sites that had tie requirements had 2 types of ties available for use from the company catalog. One would have Velcro, and the other one had an elastic band. The reason? Ties are a great thing for someone to grab a hold of to assist them in punching you in the face. I was only ever a Paul Blart in my customer-facing roles, but I did end up learning why they were a great safety invention. Our next story is Skirt to the Company Barbecue. This happened back in the early 90s. My husband was working for a company that had a male employee showing up for work regularly with obscenely short and tight shorts that barely covered the law. So a memo went out informing employees of a new dress code: no shorts for men allowed. Casual pants, skirts, dresses only. The day of the annual afternoon summer barbecue, held on Hot Top out in the parking lot, was around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The man enjoys his comfort on a hot day and has a fine sense of humor, so he cued malicious compliance and wore my below-the-knee wrap skirt to work. His manager saw him in the morning and asked if he had anything else to wear with him. The answer, of course, was no. Trying not to laugh, he said, if you ever freaking do this to me again, I am going to end you. My husband just smirked and wore the skirt, complete with steel-toed safety boots, to the barbecue and was the hit of the party. Hey man, with legs like that, you might as well rock it anyways, right? Just kidding, I know it's a below-the-knee wrap skirt. I wonder if they got any out there. Tolerance Respect commented, I firmly believe, given the natural design of the male anatomy, kilts make much more sense than a slotted opening with interlocking metal teeth and a slider. Let things hang naturally, as they should. Bouch Audie Shyla replied, I used to have a male helper who was very fat. Like most fat men, it was mostly his upper body and down to his waist. His legs were thin in proportion to the rest of him, so his shorts were loose in the legs. He also didn't wear underwear. Bouch was a kitten at the time. Tyler sat down and we were chatting when Bouch must have gotten a peek at Tyler's dangle toy. She launched herself into his shorts. Bouch learned some new words that day, and Tyler learned to wear underwear when he worked for me. Our next story is, it's good US money. Years ago, working your basic convenience store gig, guy comes in, wanders the stacks, and comes to me with about $7.50 worth of stuff and hands me a $100 bill. I say, dude, please tell me you have something smaller. I just opened up about 45 minutes ago. I don't think I can break that. All true. I knew my till was on a razor's edge for this one. I see that look on his face, hear that tone. No, it's all I've got. Those in customer service know that voice, that I'm the customer, you're the peasant tone. Right, okay then. I knew the type, but I tried begging off, giving him an out before I turn on my Gen X lack of freaks. Still polite and professional, I say, well, I can't make any promise and I can't check while the sale is still on the screen. They say, well, you have to take it. It's good US money. That isn't how this works. If I ain't got the cash, I have every right to refuse service, but hey, you set the rules, so malicious compliance it is. I will make you regret this. Pop the drawer and the god smiled upon me. 3 20s, 2 10s, and assorted $5 and $1 bills and coins later, he has his change. He says, what's this? I said, your change? I wasn't sure I could pull it off, but we got lucky. Enjoy your afternoon. He's just standing there, unsure how to respond or act. I said, is everything okay? It's good US money. All sweetness and charm. Never saw anyone go from 1 to completely impotent 100 so fast. He wanted to chew me out or complain to my boss, but knew I had done nothing wrong. I gave him what he demanded, $90+ change from a $100 bill. What's he gonna howl about? Your clerk gave me exact change. The boss replies, and you're angry why? I watched each and every thought run across his face, trying to make me look bad and just couldn't. So he just turned around and sulked away out the door. I've put in 40+ years behind the counter in 4 states and dozens of stores, and this is by far my single most favoritist customer exchange ever. For any of you longtime listeners out there, let me know if I've ever read a similar story in the comments before. But I can't remember if there was ever a story that ticked the boxes just so good of that narrow niche of giving the person exactly what they wanted to the point where they can't even say anything, but also completely pissing them off. Like somehow there's an exchange in this story where OP handed another guy $90+ and that guy went on to have a furious brain shutdown. Cinder's Paradigm commented, working at a cashless stadium in the UK, I've heard the "you have to take it, it's legal tender" argument more than once. I've had to explain that a private business has the right to accept or refuse payment in any manner they choose. The phrase legal tender has no bearing in this situation. PSU 8th replied, when I worked at McDonald's, I'd get the seniors in at open, paying for their 43-cent senior coffee with 20s, 50s, and even 100s. Like heck, we only had $75 of change in our drawers, and getting hit with 4 20s in a row really shut us down because the managers hated running change. I never really got why people wanted to have larger bills broken at the start of the day to carry all that change around. I guess the closest thing would be the construction/site guys who maybe want exact change so they can all pay one guy to do the lunch run. Our next story is, you will stack the hay how I want it stacked. I used to work for and manage a rural stock feed supply shop that delivered hard feed and hay to many of the local hobby farms. During the earlier year or two of my time there was a lady who, after some time, we came to a solid understanding that she can be a prickly jerk, and we have since laughed about this incident. For the sake of keeping her identity safe, let's call her Janice for this tale. Now, this gal is somewhere in her mid-60s and has quite the boomer attitude when it comes to doing things. That fun old shtick of, I've been doing this since you were in nappies, so do it how I tell you. Well, this one fine summer, in the middle of a drought, she ordered a large batch of hay. 60 bales. I drive out in the truck, and I know I'm gonna get a good workout putting these babies in her shed because the truck can't get close to her shed. Not a cloud in the sky to stop that sun beating down my neck as I unload the truck. 33 degrees Celsius, which is somewhere in the 90s degrees Fahrenheit for you Freedom Unit loving readers. I start stacking the hay in her shed in a formation something like 1 vertical, 2 horizontal, and 1 vertical. Then the next layer, 1 horizontal, 2 vertical, and 1 horizontal. So the hay bales will interlock kind of like brickwork and not fall over. Each layer being 6 bales, 2 stacks, 5 high. 60 bales. If you need a bit more explanation on that, well, I don't quite know what to tell you, sorry. I also didn't quite know what to tell old Janice when she came running up. "You're stacking it all wrong," she tells me. "You'll never fit it all in the shed." As I try to explain my plan, she talks over me and begins to gruffly comment something about uppity young craps who think they know everything. She pulls apart my stack and begins to stack the hay all in the same lines. Imagine them all horizontal. I already see the problem. Stacking 5 bales high like this is going to see a whole stack fall down, whoever goes to get the hay from the top of it. It's dangerous, it's stupid, it's not safe. Cue malicious compliance. I stack the hay just like she wanted me to, and I notice the stack is very close to someone screaming, "Jenga!" I tell her she can put the final bale up. "No, I'll feed this one out tonight," she says. Happy that I stacked it her way, she waves goodbye. I get in my truck, I start the engine. "Oh, freak!" I hear from the hay shed. I swivel my head, and there lay poor old Janice under 10 bales of hay that somehow fell on top of her. I promptly unbury her. I call my boss and I say, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to restack all this hay." My boss replies, "She just won't learn her lesson." This time, as I restack the hay, I explain why I stacked it the way I did, and while she rolled her shoulder, wincing at the pain caused by her own stupidity, she says to me, "Glad one of us knows what they're doing." I love that the manager said, "She just won't learn her lesson." Like old Janice has been torturing every single person that came out there to stack those hay bales for her. But hey, at least she learned her lesson here. It's kind of crazy that it had to be 1 extra hay bale away from meeting death's door for her to learn it, but at least we got there. Coder Joe 1 commented, "She's lucky you didn't bail on her." Says What commented, "This reminds me of a hay-related story from my youth. Me and my neighbor Buddy were about 11 or so, and Buddy's dad had a barn full of hay bales. We arranged it to have interior rooms with a secret door disguised as the end of a bale. Was fun until Buddy's dad used enough hay to discover our playhouse and realized he had much less hay than he thought." Our next story is, "You want to abide by the contract? No problem. I work for an airline. Its policy is that it'll pay for parking at one airport of the employee's choice so the employee can commute to work. My nearest airport is usually convenient, but sometimes it's easier to make the long drive to my base airport when I have a trip that makes air commuting difficult. My company owns a parking lot at my base airport, so they don't pay for individual parking privileges there. I wrote an email explaining my situation and asking for parking privileges at both my base airport and the airport nearest me. This would have resulted in my company paying less per month for my parking than if I were to park solely at the airport nearest my home. The response came back with a simple, "No, your contract states that you can park at one location, period." Fast forward a couple of years, my company signs a letter of understanding regarding a scheduling issue with my union. When I attempt to exercise the rights granted in this letter, my manager calls and tells me, "Corporate says we aren't following that anymore." Well, if the company isn't willing to work with me on parking, I'm not willing to work with it on this letter. I demand that they follow the contract, including the letter of understanding. When they refuse, I file a grievance with my union. This results in the company having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to other employees on whom it had pulled its shenanigans. Employees who weren't annoyed enough to file a grievance. If they want me to strictly follow the contract, I'm going to make sure they do too. So some extra context if anybody might be confused about a letter of understanding. Basically, it's an extra agreed upon thing that was made with the union. Basically, an extra right for the given union contract term that the company has to agree to and work with. Not only because the company gave OP a hard time because of the original parking fiasco, but also because the company was just blatantly trying to violate the agreed upon understanding. OP's basically like, alright, let's burn it down, report it to the union. Like, this company is just trying to screw its employees over at this point. Coder Joe 1 commented, "What was the letter of misunderstanding?" C Ford Fail commented, "B." Our next story is, "Access removed, here's all my work. I work in a role where I own a portion of the software. I don't work in IT, but I do system configuration for the portion I manage. I had admin access until one day, IT removed it without warning and without notice. They claimed risk and board decisions. Of course, I could rampage and get my access back because it saves the company a significant amount of money each year, as we don't need to use external contractors. There's also no one else in the company that knows my part of the system or how to create business rules, scripting, and coding for this particular system. While people know JavaScript, they would need to become familiar with the system, which will take time. Instead, fine. I send a list of all the things they now need to take over so the work still gets done. Noted that there can be no delays in turnaround time despite there being an extra step. Noted that I will still need to approve every change in configuration. The list totaled to approximately 30 hours per week. It also requires 6 a.m. starts at points through the month. I made sure to also confirm that they would also be required to come with me for all meetings regarding the system or data because I won't be repeating myself or duplicating my effort. Within 30 minutes, the decision was reversed and I had my access back. I don't think that'll be changing back anytime soon. Not when we work under separate budgets and their team always cry time and cost poor. I mean, good for OP for accepting this and going back to their old role within those 30 minutes. And maybe it was a consequence of OP making a big fuss and making it clear how much work there is. But like, in a way, could OP not have been like, look, you took those responsibilities off my plate. I'm more than happy in my new role now. You guys keep paying me the rate you pay me and good luck with all the work. I guess maybe at that point, OP very likely would be gambling their job. I don't know. Technos commented, a former coworker of mine had his access cut and sent an email, something like, salutations and welcome to the new team you must have hired. Let me know when you're ready for your handover. I've been anxious to retire again for years, and this is perfect, seeing as how I've just vested again. Be aware though that since I'm no longer maintaining product, I'll be out of the office a lot, like all of the time. Maybe leave a message with my personal assistant, if you haven't fired her yet, and she'll get it to me when I decide I need to answer my phone. It took IT 20 seconds to restore his access, and 2 weeks for him to return to the office. Our next story is, making them cold just seemed like the right thing to do. I used to work in a retirement village with a communal restaurant/dining room. There was this awful family who, despite being only a 15-minute drive away from the village, would almost never visit their mother. We can call the mother Sam. Sam was kind. Sam's family were constantly neglecting to provide items such as clothing, and most of Sam's valuables had, in my opinion, been stolen by them. As they were the power of attorney for financial, personal, and health matters, nothing legally could be done apparently. Fast forward to a hot Australian Christmas day. The village is hosting a Christmas lunch for the old people who didn't manage to go out for the day. Families were welcome, but you had to book ahead. The invitation clearly said to bring a jumper, as the AC was very cold to cater for the constant opening of the dining room doors, with guests coming and going. Naturally, Sam's family failed to book a seat and had to be accommodated last minute. Naturally, they were the only ones without a jumper. I got the privilege of finding them a place to sit, so I dressed Sam in an extra warm, nice outfit and set up the table under the big main AC vent. 10 minutes later, Sam's annoyed son and daughter-in-law approached me and asked, "Can you please turn down the air conditioning? It is too cold." "Yep, no problem, I can do that," I said. And I did. I turned that AC down an extra 4 degrees, I think to 16 degrees Celsius if memory serves. Sam's family left earlier than any other family, and Sam was able to spend the rest of Christmas with people who spoke to her like she was a human being. Edit, jumper equals sweater or jersey. We also used jumper cables to warm up the old people until the Aged Care Commission decided it was a crime. You know, that must be devastating to work in a fairly thankless job like that, actually care about the people you help and work with, and then you see some trash family come in that takes everything this person has and treats them like crap and treats them kind of like a prop that they have to make appearances for and kind of like pretend they care. At least somebody's looking out for this lady. OIC Nikki812 commented, "I hear stories like this about families being awful to their elderly parents. I can't help but think, though, what the old people must have been like in their prime. Were they awful to their kids? Is this behavior just karma coming back to bite them? I think about my own mother, disowned her whole family because she never wanted to be a mother and she hated my grandparents. My brother reached out after about 10 years, no contact with our mom. She blew up saying that she was happy without us in her life, and then when he respectfully said okay and he'll respect her decision, she went off again about how we must not love her and blah blah blah. My mom will 100% be that person in a nursing home with no one visiting and crying about why her family never comes to visit, and some caretaker sucker is bound to believe her and blame the family for being jerks, because she's nice and charismatic when she wants to be. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.